Whenever I watch or read about my favorite fictional characters, I can't help but psychoanalyze their choices and character traits, their philosophy, their psychology. Why do they do the things that they do? And would those traits manifest themselves in the same way in our own real world? Could they be likable, infamous, or just hated? And the most intriguing aspect for me is if you or I personally know anyone like them. Do you know anyone like Light Yagami from Death Note?
Your body don't belong to you, as the beats and the bass are flowing through. Shut your eyes and come to me, whistle to my melody.
Okay, let's get started with the story. Death Note is a manga which later became an anime that tells the story of a high school student, Light Yagami. He discovers a supernatural notebook dropped by the Shinigamis, translated to God of Death, that enables him to kill anyone he wants just by picturing their face while writing the victim's name in that notebook. Ryuke the Shinigami accidentally dropped the notebook that Yagami then uses in order to cleanse the world of criminals and thus the evil in it, and create a utopia with him as the god of it. As he starts murdering people in the name of the idea of justice, he becomes known as a faceless serial killer Kira, which is the Japanese pronunciation of killer. Basically, Death Note is a story of conflicts with those who try to help him and the complex psychological battles with those who attempt to stop him. In episode 30 of the anime, Yagami said, "If we catch Kira, he is evil. If he wins and rules the world, then he is justice." To better understand Light Yagami, I think it's a good idea to note some environmental factors that could have had an effect on his development up to this point. To do this, I'll outline some important factors. Yagami lives in a large city in Japan with his family. He has 2 parents and 1 sister, a nuclear family. He's a third-year high school student who attends supplemental classes at Prep Academy due to his high intelligence and attends college right after. Let's also note that regarding his social life, he is aware that he is somewhat popular and that girls find him attractive and are drawn to him. But, if I may be more precise, I'd like to explore these factors a little bit further. So all the way back to episode 1 of the anime, Light Yagami is disgusted at the latest and constant news reports of crime and murder in the Kanto region of Japan. Given Yagami is likely in or around Tokyo, we can assume the crime rates are similar, right? Yagami would live in Tokyo, or a city similar to it, with nearly 120,000 reported crimes per year. This reflects a 2013 Tokyo report according to Yokohama city official. Given this perspective, Yagami says the world is rotten. However, in contrast, his home is a reflection of true peace and justice. Light's family life seems perfect. Well, at least what the writers show us. Soichiro, Light's father, clearly shows love for his family and son. Soichiro respects Light and treats him with love and trust. He is present in the lives of the kids and yet being devoted to the Japanese task force with a strong sense of justice. Light has a sister who looks up to him and comes to him for help in school when she needs him. His mother adores him and coddles him and is proud of him for his achievements in his social and academic life. Yagami is a gifted student and exceptionally brilliant. Based on the evidence so far, he is an honor student who gets bored with his classes as he already understands the concepts being explained by his teacher. This was explained in the English literature class, which at the moment was possessing philosophical and ethical questions alongside theological ones. I think they cleverly precurse concepts they'll be dealing with later on in the series with Shinigamis and ethos and such. We see that Yagami's mind is hungry for challenge by the way he acts outside of class too. Despite Yagami being purposely introverted and distant, he still is a popular student due to his status and high grades and exceptional good looks. In episode 1, he walks past a couple of girls who giggle as he passes, which establishes the social status with the girls at his school. He then uses this knowledge to attract and manipulate women to advance his agenda throughout the story, starting with asking Yuri to Space World in order to draw out and discover the face and name of that one FBI agent who was stalking him. In a moment, we will take another dive yet deeper into Yagami's psyche. But first, an article titled How the Environment Affects Child Development by M. Farouk Radwan, Master of Science. wrote that adults are no more than grown-up children, and went on to later say, quote, "Some children adapt to a positive way by doing useful things, while others adapt in a negative way by achieving the same goals in a harmful method. Both a cop and a criminal can have the same goal of feeling superior and in control, but the first achieves that goal in a way that helps society, while the second achieves that goal in a destructive way." Unquote. Light Yagami may be the protagonist of Death Note, but is far from a good guy. His dream of a world cleansed of evil may seem righteous on the surface, but his methods are questionable at best. Light once said, "Then and only then, the world will start moving in the right direction. It'll be a new world, free of injustice and populated by people who I judge to be honest, kind, and hard-working." Ryuke then responded, "But if you did that, it would make you the only bad person left." Light refuted this with some irony, saying he has no idea what Ryuke was talking about, and goes on to establish the narrative that he is the perfect example of who will be left in this new world. Quote, "I will become the god of this new world," Light said after that. Based on his blatant abuse of others and constant self-interested actions, falsely justified by his own vision, among other things, Light Yagami is obviously a high-functioning, psychopathic misanthropist who has developed high social status with deep-rooted and complex attributes. And I'll make my case as I spell out my reasoning. He hates people. In general, he is sick of hearing of murder and blatant evil over the news day in and day out. He loathes criminals and violent people, yet even at the least he feels superior over the average morally balanced person, narcissistic even. This plays a role in him feeling generally worthy and offers a boost to his high social status. Because of that status, in high school the girls can't help themselves but to want his attention. Yagami later uses the same social influence in one small way and two grandiose instances. Once with Yuri in episode 4, Misa after that, and then Kiyomi Takada after that even. He certainly has the capacity to understand the intricacies of human psychology in real time, and he uses it to manipulate those around him. Underneath the humble and charming top layer, Yagami is arrogant, persistent, and highly intelligent. L, Yagami's adversary, notes that he has a, quote, "childish concept of right and wrong" in episode 3. In addition, Light is idealist, dogmatic, and extremely egotistical. "Well, Light," Ryuke said in episode 4, "I'm not sure why I never noticed this until now, but you're quite the positive thinker." Light laughed and affirmed, "Yeah, of course I am. That's why I'm using the Death Note to create a better world. You have to be a positive thinker to even attempt something like this." As Light Yagami falls deeper into the darkness that slowly is melting over his soul with every life he takes, he begins to believe that he is making a righteous sacrifice, sacrificing his soul. Given this power, it is revealed he has no fundamental moral line he won't cross and believes that the end justifies the means, even admitting he may have to kill his family if they ever find out. With little to no regard for human life, he quickly and early on develops a god complex. Okay. Now we know who Yagami is and how he thinks. So what type of psychological disorders are attributes of Light Yagami? Well, I'll do my best to hit each one of his observable traits and mixed disorders in the series, and after I will attempt to collect them into a concise, easy-to-understand analysis of his psychology, starting in the order in which they were addressed before. One of the most difficult disorders to identify is psychopathy. Yagami always appears normal and charming, which is a trait in psychopaths. Psychopaths and Light Yagami are manipulative because they lack empathy and often have, in this case, a childish sense of right and wrong. In other words, it appears he has little to no developed conscience. His lack of empathy isn't the only reason why he's desensitized to killing a human life, but more rather attributed to his god complex and his assumed right to judge and to take those lives. Few psychopaths actually end up serial killers, though most serial killers, I'd argue, are either psychopaths or sociopaths, which we will address later. Now, the terms psychopath and sociopath are often used interchangeably, but really, psychopathic traits are more inborn and natural. Yagami was most likely predisposed to behave psychopathically and was pushed over the edge with certain environmental factors. An example, the Death Note. In the thought process leading to Yagami's actions as Kira, we can identify a trait named misanthropy. Misanthropy is the general hatred, dislike, distrust, or contempt of human nature. Misos meaning hatred and anthropos meaning human. As late as the 19th century, misanthropy was a main component of human behavior, signaling hatred for corruption and stupidity. Although today, what Light has is considered a deranged pathology. No, this doesn't consider Yagami to have a psychological disorder, like psychopathy for example, but rather it is a trait woven into any given mental disorder. It could have even appeared in him if he was not mentally ill. Misanthropy doesn't appear as a disorder in the DSM, which we will have to now briefly traverse through to continue this analysis. Although the term God complex is not a clinical term we can use to diagnose Light, as it is not outlined in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM, it does overlap with other traits and characteristics of superiority complex or narcissistic personality disorder. Relative to his peers in society, Yagami believes he is more just, more trustworthy, and morally superior to others. I've read this described as the self-enhancement effect. An article by Scientific American makes the point that this self-righteous attitude can prove, quote, destructive because it reduces our willingness to cooperate or compromise, creates distance between ourselves and others, and can lead to intolerance or even violence, unquote. Does this not sound like Kira as he plays judge and jury, and threatening to kill anyone who dares oppose him? Striking fear in the citizens of Japan? To what end? His new world, where he is the god of it? Still, there's an upside to self-importance, mistakenly assuming others can be more trustworthy or loyal than they really are can cause Light to be lied to or cheated. But Light Yagami gives himself license for future immoral actions, as it does erode his own ethical behavior because he feels less obligated to follow a strict ethical code set by his society. And do I even need to explore narcissistic personality disorder, which I've done in a video in the past? Regardless, I'll be brief. The disorder creates a sense of grandiosity and gives Yagami a superior view of himself when compared to others. In 2016, a paper by Emily Grijalva and Luao Zheng, not gonna even pretend like I pronounced those correctly, explored this disorder. I'll just read the summary from Psychology Today that I believe describes Light Yagami almost perfectly. Quote, overall, there was a tendency for narcissists to have an enhanced view of themselves. Interestingly, narcissists were particularly likely to enhance traits that reflect their ability to influence the world. So, narcissists perceive themselves to be more arrogant, extroverted, honest, and open than other people thought them to be. They also thought themselves to be more intelligent, better leaders, and more physically attractive than others thought them to be. End quote. Therefore, you see the overlap of psychological concepts and theories like the God complex, narcissism, superiority complex, as well as the philosophical ones such as dogmaticism and egotistical behaviors. Yagami refuses to admit the possibility of error or failure, regardless of the evidence or how impossible the task. He is dogmatic in believing he is unquestionably correct. He is excessively conceited and self-absorbed, therefore shows no regard for societal conventions and demands to be worshipped as the god of the new world. He is excessively conceited and self-absorbed, therefore shows no regard for societal conventions, and he demands to be worshipped as the god of the new world. He climbs higher and higher up the social status ladder, like an addiction to a godlike ascension. Although, not any type of psychological disorder, nor negative or positive trait per se, but an important sociological trait to note is his high social status. A high social status typically indicates that one is dominant, a leader, and valuable, among other things. High social status, especially in Light's case, doesn't always mean good. Yagami often takes as much space as he needs. He is relaxed. He always appears relaxed when circumstances threaten his plan, even in a panic. Yagami keeps his head straight facing and is confident he can handle any problem he is confronted with. Yagami uses a type of social influence to alter the behavior or perceptions of others through abuse, deceptive, and underhanded tactics, which is, if you haven't guessed it, psychological manipulation. He constantly manipulates those around him, with the first case in order being Yuri, his classmate, Naomi, who is the widow of Ray Penber, Misa and her Shinigami, Rem, the list goes on. The process of manipulation is to first deceptively lead an unknowing victim into domination and then emotionally exploit the victim in order to serve the purposes of the manipulator at the victim's expense. Those purposes are extremely idealistic, by the way, in this case. Remember when Yagami said, "That's why I'm using the Death Note, to create a better world. You have to be a positive thinker to even attempt something like this." This is a textbook idealist. Philosophically, idealists generally believe the world can be a better place and are optimistic in its outcome. Upon finding the Death Note, Light finds meaning in previously held universal truths in which he is that chosen one to bring a new world cleansed of evil. He has big picture ideas and absolutely fascinated with everyone participating in the bigger picture and will encourage people through Kira to support his vision of the world cleansed of evil. Yagami sometimes, and certainly in that universe in which we don't see, uses metaphors to express profound observations. Rules are only guidelines to idealists, and he will not hesitate to break them if the circumstances demand it. Light also exhibits altruistic tendencies, believing he is righteous, sacrificing his own soul, which I've also made a video on. It gives him satisfaction to imagine him saving the world. So in summary, Light Yagami is normal and charming, yet deceptively manipulative. He is predisposed to behaving psychopathically and is pushed over the edge with the Death Note being the environmental factor. In addition, he is misanthropic in his tendencies, trying to kill off those he hates and who he shows contempt for in society. Due to his superiority complex relative to the rest of society, Yagami believes he is more just and morally superior. And being arrogant, intelligent, a better leader, and more physically attractive all help make up his narcissistic personality, which exacerbates his dogmatic and egotistical philosophies. He is confident and always relaxed, even under high pressure, and uses his high status and social influence to alter the behaviors of others through deceptive tactics. Yagami easily manipulates everyone around him to exploit them for his benefit. Last, but not to say more important than his other traits, Light Yagami is idealistic. I would argue this philosophy of his is the fuel that helps facilitate all his other psychological actions. Light is always optimistic about the outcomes, he holds deeper universal truths, sees the big picture, believes rules can be broken, and ultimately believes he is acting altruistically. Light Yagami validates his actions by claiming altruism, is obsessed with him being a god, and is addicted to the power that comes with it. In order to connect everything we've analyzed so far to the reality we live in, we need to take a step back and separate our minds from all the science fiction, magic apparitions, theology, mythology, and fiction in general, and aim to apply Light's psych profile to real-world people and theorize how their lives would play out around this specific set of personality traits and disorders. How are they like in every aspect of life? And I think we can pretty accurately theorize how this exact type of person would be in reality. Given people like Light Yagami will live in big cities, it's important to note that people who live in large cities are far more likely to exhibit mental disorders than those in rural areas. And according to the DSM-4 TR, which is produced by the American Psychiatric Association, prevalence of psychopathy in females and males is between 1 to 3%, depending on the methodology. Psychologists note that a red flag to psychopathy is callous and unemotional character in a child. As outlined before, the disorder can be genetic and also underlined until factors bring it to the surface. In this case, it wouldn't be a death note, but something more like physical or mental abuse. On the opposite side, even a lack of rules can allow these tendencies to manifest. Strict rules and clear consequences can change these people's paths of psychopathy. But when their parent or parents coddle them, it enables this behavior to exacerbate the problem. Much how we see Sachiko Yagami, his mother, act towards light. Even if the parents of these people can sense this potential behavior, they'll often cling to the positive because they can't accept their child being psychopathic. After, as people like Light Yagami grow, they become ever charismatic, funny, and entertaining. This makes their family and friends feel carefree and sometimes relieved. Psychopathy aside, people like Light Yagami are extremely intelligent, certainly in the top 2%. High intelligence can show itself in high reasoning skills, creativity, curiosity, vocabulary, and near perfect memory. In addition, these people can be perfectionists. Oftentimes, their ad-level curriculum may run too slowly or the subject matter might not seem relevant, therefore investment is pointless. Sometimes they need a challenge, and this manifests itself in absent-mindedness to the subject matter. This person could develop a sense of superiority over the classmates or even teachers. You'd think this theoretical person with any level of misanthropy would be introverted, but on the contrary, people like Yagami would be outgoing and have a high social status. These people are manipulators, though. These people are manipulators, but however do lean towards psychopathy versus sociopathy. Although manipulation and high social status are not synonymous, in people like Light Yagami, they complement one another. These real-world people will detect your weakness, then use it against you. In the family, social, and workplace environments, a manipulator like Yagami will take advantage of their peers and repeat the violation until the victim puts a stop to the exploitation. Assuming this theoretical person will have a high social status, in movement they'll walk smoothly with long, confident strides, while in conversation they'll have very little head motion. Their face is relaxed and eye contact strong. His or her chest is proud and their chin up. Oftentimes, people who know they have high status will also stand square with the person they're speaking to, with their feet planted flat on the ground. Despite popular belief, as a high-functioning, intelligent person, they still may or may not graduate an honor student or even go to college. Sometimes they forego higher education altogether to chase what interests them, big or small. I wouldn't rule out a family due to their high charisma and predictable high financial status. As far as a career goes, my theory is that these people like Yagami will have a career in an industry that puts them in leadership over people and that accomplishes big goals. However, it may have to be a position with little contact with others, as psychopathic and misanthropic tendencies would make it difficult to work with others. To succeed in this industry, he'd have to be an idealist that has huge vision and is optimistic of his abilities to affect the outcome. These people are perfectionists, so the position may have tedious aspects. We might see this theoretical person go into industries like engineering, science, or technology. I think it likely this person could forge his own path as an entrepreneur. Possible paths could likely be a blog writer, computer system analyst, programmer, software developer, or I think unlikely, on the business side of things, maybe a venture capitalist, or even all the way to CEO of a large corporation. This theoretical person is highly likely to break bad into criminal activities or even passionate manslaughter. However, his high intelligence and reasoning would argue against this due to the high risks involved. Only something like the death note would push this person over the edge, I think. He'll likely find other means of high social and financial status, potentially unlawful or questionable means lacking societal ethics. He'll change the world with money and influence. So, in reality, despite a pretty diverse and mostly negative set of disorders, people like Light Yagami can live in society often without breaking too much out of the conformity and rules of society in which they live, but it goes without saying, it's probably best to avoid people like this. Sound like anybody you know? Have you met a real-life Light Yagami? Whether or not you've watched this content for leisure or to learn something, please share this content anywhere you share brain food type content, like Facebook, Twitter, minds.com, if it was informative to you. And before getting back to reality, remember, it's only a fantasy.